Hey guys, what happens if you pit Lex Luthor against someone like the Batman? And I don't mean in a war of wit or influence or contacts. I mean in a fisticuff, mano y mano. I think the answer is pretty obvious. Batman is going to kick his butt. That's just the way it is. Even though I understand that Lex Luthor does have a rudimentary knowledge of karate, just to get himself out of scuffles. In front of a trained fighter, he's not going to hold up very, very far. And that makes sense, because Batman has spent his entire, well, not his entire life, I think his teenage years onwards, he has spent studying every sort of deadly martial art known to man. He's honed himself, right? Makes perfect sense. Even someone like a Blue Beetle, the Manhunter, Black Canary, the Huntress, all the street level fighters, I think you can pretty much say with certainty that they would win in a one-on-one fight against Lex Luthor. I suppose where Lex comes into his own is with his influence, his power, his connections, his huge wealth through LexCorp or Luthor Corp. So fine. He can hire people. He can make suits. He can sort of like do things that the average person, even the average street fighter, can't do. Fine. But this notion of Lex Luthor being any type of threat, whether real or imagined, against someone like Superman, who, Superman goes toe to toe with new gods, right? He's one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe, let alone planet Earth. My mind has always boggled at this idea of pitting someone like Lex, or claiming that Lex Luthor is the arch nemesis of Superman. I've never seen it. Similarly, I've never seen the Joker as the arch nemesis of Batman. To be completely honest, great character, yes, but the reality is that one well-placed, deadly punch by Batman, through to the throat or to the nose, it could kill the Joker without too much hassle. He just doesn't do it, but that doesn't make Batman, any less of a real threat to the Joker, and the Joker a very minute threat to the Batman. So, with Lex Luthor v Superman, it becomes even more ridiculous. How do you pit them? All Superman has to do is lose it one day. Like, for example, in the Injustice storyline, right? When he loses it against the Joker, who, he basically punches a hole through the Joker's chest, right? When Superman gets mad, it doesn't care how psychotic or how crazy or how an agent of chaos you might be. If Superman loses his cool at you, you are done for. If Batman loses his cool at you, then if you're a normal non-superpowered being, you're done for. You've had it. So what does Lex Luthor have that qualifies him as like this arch sort of villain in Superman's historical canon? Okay, look, you could argue that the suit, the flight power armor that Lex created for himself, and at points he has kryptonite embedded within the armor. That could make him a pretty formidable foe against Superman, because of course Superman's weakness, I suppose the only weakness apart from magic, the prime weakness of Superman is kryptonite. But you see, here's the thing: kryptonite it's the kryptonite that's the danger. It's not Lex Luthor himself. Look, if you give Mr. Average Joe Bloggs down the street a rock made of kryptonite, and Superman comes and just walks the street, and he comes across this chap, he's going to go down. If Mr. Joe Bloggs decides to throw or sort of like wave this kryptonite in front of Superman, Superman's going to have a bad day. That doesn't mean that Joe Bloggs is superpowered or a real threat. It just means the kryptonite, which is the real threat, is being waved in his face. I think it's the same thing with Lex Luthor. No matter how powerful you might make this suit of armor, on its own, it's not much of a threat. Actually, speaking of the armor, I've always thought that there's this one major flaw in this armor, which kind of makes it ineffective, if you ask me, and that is the fact that there's no head protection. I mean, your body's fully covered, your head's completely exposed. I mean, your brain's in your head, right? It's probably one of the most vulnerable parts of your body. Your eyes, your your mouth, your head, and it's unprotected. I mean, Superman just has to fire his laser beams at him, and he can just explode his head. I mean, how does he fly without like a helmet or goggles? How? Look, fair enough. I digress. I don't want to go into the critique of his armor necessarily, but this representation of Lex standing triumphant over Superman, you will note that he is holding a block of kryptonite. It's not just Lex in his armor, and I do like the design of the armor, that whole purple and green sort of color scheme, and overall the armor looks pretty good. But yeah, get a helmet, get a helmet, Lex, because really, one well placed punch to your face, you're going down. I mean, the rest of your body's covered. It just doesn't make any sense. And this is the point where I have to remind myself that, it's just a comic book. And I love all comic books. And that, when I signed up for this, it was with a clear suspension of belief. So that's okay. It's just, I like comic books. I get emotional about these things. So there. But yeah. So we've established that without the armor, Lex is pretty much out of the fight. No matter how many of his resources he utilizes, no matter how many gangsters he can get under his wing, no matter how many politicians around the world sort of gear up, no matter how many armies he manages to muster up, they are all useless against Superman. So what is it? If someone can help me out in the comments to explain to me how, for so many years, and in all the the various magazine sort of polls, they always list Lex Luthor as one of a really major villain in comic book history, yes, but always as Superman's arch nemesis. Now, someone like Doomsday, yeah, General Zod, absolutely, even Brainiac, fine, Mr. Mixplitzit, however you pronounce his name, the little imp from the fifth dimension. I mean, he's got almost unlimited. He's like the Beyonder from Marvel, right? There's these unlimited magical powers. Yes, that would be a major threat because Superman is vulnerable to magic anyway. The Parasite is a pretty major threat. All of these aforementioned characters could easily fight for the title of Superman's arch nemesis, particularly Doomsday. I think particularly Doomsday. And yet Lex Luthor is the arch nemesis. It's a weird world. It's a weird comic book world as well, actually. I think only in comic books could this really happen. I think if there was a real life Superman with all the powers and all, I mean, actually it's debatable that if there was a real life Superman, would they be like Superman is, virtuous and caring and kind and using his powers for good only? Is that how people genuinely are? I mean, I don't know. Everything that I've seen in my life seems to direct me to the opposite conclusion, that the more power you have, the more corrupt you become. But, it's like Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility. Unfortunately, not everybody exercises that. Anyway, if there was a real-life Superman with all the powers and the costume and the paraphernalia, and you had someone like Lex Luthor, come on. It's a joke. It's a joke. So I think what we need to do, actually, we don't have to do anything. I understand it's comic books. It's fine. We can just accept it for what it is and get on with it. But yeah, always makes me laugh when I look back and see all these comic books where basically the only reason why Lex was able to get away with so much stuff is because Superman basically let him. That does not make Lex Luthor an arch nemesis. It makes him a nuisance that Superman puts up with because he's a really nice guy. A bit like Spider-Man, right? When Spider-Man cuts loose, when he lets loose on his villains, they are in trouble. Many of them, and these are superpowered villains. So you take someone like Superman against a non-superpowered normal human being. What you're going to get is a mess. Not an arch nemesis, a mess if Superman loses it. So let's always keep that in mind. Anyway, guys, that's my ramble for today. Yeah, thank you for listening in. Any thoughts? If you think I'm completely wrong or I've lost the plot, correct me in the comments. In any event, like and subscribe if you will, and I will catch you guys in the next one.